This is the Average Guy Network, and you have found Home Gadget Geek show number 349. We're super close to 350, by the way. Recorded on March 29th, 2018. Here on Home Gadget Geeks, we cover all the favorite tech gadgets that find their way into your home. News, reviews, product updates, and conversation, all for the Average Tech Guy. I'm your host, Jim Carlson, broadcasting live from the Average Guy.TV studios here in a beautiful Bellevue, Nebraska. We're having a string of good weather, but it's really, Mike, it's been kind of weird, like a good day and then a bad day. I went out to Barrett's last night to meet with a friend. When I got there, it was like outdoor on the patio kind of weather. By the time we got food and headed out the patio, it was raining and cold. So that kind of year.
Yeah, no kidding. I'm trying to play golf this weekend for my birthday, and I'm like, okay, I hope I can get out at some point, but it's been so up and down, you can't predict.
I think Saturday is the day to go. Sunday's Easter. Just go to church, stay indoors. I don't think it's going to be very good here. Of course, we post a show with world-class show notes each week at theaverageguy.tv. Don't forget, you can join us live on the mobile app as well. We've got a dynamite mobile app, makes it available through LastPass. So if you're a LastPass subscriber, you shouldn't be, or you should be if you're not. Check out LastPass, lastpass.com. We appreciate their sponsorship of the show, as well as the sponsorship of the mobile app. To get it, homegadgetgeeks.com. Don't forget, rate and review on iTunes, subscribe, and click the bell on YouTube. So if you're watching us on YouTube, right down here, there's a little bell. There's a little subscribe and a little bell. I almost never asked to do that, but I thought, maybe I should start doing that. We got 1,000 or so subscribers. I did get booted from the monetization features within YouTube because I don't have enough listening minutes. Screw you, YouTube.
Yeah.
So anyways. Yeah, isn't that stupid? Like I have enough subscribers, but just not enough listening minutes. Whatever. So click that down there. Listen to us on YouTube. We appreciate your sponsorship of the show. And then don't forget, Mike and I have a crypto conversation. Today, we're making that free and available to everyone. So typically, we send you to Patreon. We ask you to subscribe for $1 a month. By the way, $1 a month, not a lot. $1 a month, and you get our crypto conversation. Because we have Edward here today, and it's going to be awesome conversation. We want to make it available to everybody, and so that's free. All you have to do is head out to theaverageguy.tv/support. That'll take you to the Patreon page, and then look at my feed, and both the audio and video will be available for you. We're going to talk crypto and the kind of not the basics, but kind of the underpinnings of it. And then we're going to talk coins in the post show. So if you're thinking about investing or working on it or those kinds of things, pricing, all that other stuff, that's all post show conversation available on our Patreon page. Head out to theaverageguy.tv/support to get it. It's free for this show. Typically costs you $1. All right. We are settled in. We got Edward back. These are my favorite shows, by the way. Welcome back to Home Gadget Geeks.
You got bitten by the bug, huh?
I did. Did you ever think 2 or 3 years ago when we first started talking about this, I was super skeptical. I honestly had no idea what you were talking about when we first started doing this. But did you ever think I'd turn into the believer that I've turned into?
I thought you were going to have me on for one podcast and that'd be it. And now we're 5 in or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. And it's kind of good to have you back. You've become kind of the resident expert for us in the podcast. It's awesome that you're in Omaha. Because you're close by. I've got to come out and visit your office, which was pretty cool. Hey, did you ever get your podcast started? We were talking about doing it, and I even came out. Did you get something started?
We have, I don't have the latest one up yet, but yes, we have proofofpodcast.com is our domain.
Proof, PROOF of podcast.com.
Yep.
I like it.
Yep.
Yeah, that's cool. How many shows do you have out, and what are you guys talking about?
We're on show number, I think this will be 5 when I post it. We have 9 subscribers right now. So we're actually talking about we have a blockchain hackathon coming up. So that's what the latest one is about.
Is that here in the Omaha area?
In Lincoln.
Yeah.
With Few co-working.
How are you finding the crypto community in Omaha and Lincoln recently? Is it strong? Is it taking a hit with pricing taking a hit? Is it taking a hit? How's the community?
Yeah, I mean, it was growing. It was doing pretty well while the price was going up, and then recently it hasn't greatly diminished much at all. But people are, that's why we are kind of not diversifying, but we certainly want to appeal to the corporate audience who's not interested in the currency side, and so that's the blockchain piece of that is a way to get them into the community somehow. So.
Infotech is going on. AIM is the sponsor for Infotech, which is a big tech conference here in Omaha. You and I actually always connect there. We didn't show up this year.
I didn't either.
Okay, well, we missed it. We both missed it. I was going to ask you how it's going there. That's actually, I think, Infotech is where I first met you for the very first time. I interviewed you kind of blind, and you started talking about this thing called Bitcoin and the blockchain. And it'd be interesting to go back to that interview and see how stupid I really was. Like on there, somewhere. Like, I know you got to start somewhere. Well, I appreciate it indeed. Hey, while we're talking, we're talking about events that are going on, especially here in the Omaha area. We are doing a crypto event, a Bitcoin event here. Can you talk a little bit about when that is and what it is, and if folks wanted to participate, how they would find out about it?
Sure. So there's these are happening in other cities, so it's not. And we actually did our first one back in the day, 2014. We did our first Bitcoin Day Omaha, and the idea was to start. It was a means of education. We just tried to get the word out. A lot of people hadn't even heard of Bitcoin yet, and so a lot of just people curious about it, and it was worth, who knows, a couple $100 back then probably, and but the goal at that point for our company, I've mentioned this before, is like we were originally thinking, we were going to start to onboard retailers to accept Bitcoin, and then eventually that we realized that wasn't going to happen. So yeah, we did 2014. Then we had our FinTech conference in 2015, and then recently now we've brought Bitcoin Day back, and so we're going to have it's going to be on May 5th. So we picked that day because that's Berkshire Hathaway shareholders meeting, and because we know how Warren feels about Bitcoin, so we wanted to kind of give him a little poke. And
I love it, going head to head with Warren Buffett. That's pretty sweet. That's pretty. For those that don't know, Berkshire Hathaway, run by Warren Buffett, one of the richest guys in the world. That goes back and forth. Who's the richest guy? I think Bezos is in there, and there's some guy from Saudi Arabia as well. Bill Gates falls into that category. But they have a big party. Berkshire Hathaway has a big party the first weekend in May every single year. It's awesome for the economy. I mean, and we're really good. A lot of people don't know, actually, that Berkshire event has prepped Omaha to be a host for a lot of things. So we've done the Olympic swim trials. NCAA tournament was here last weekend. And so people go, seriously? I mean, this year it was what? Atlanta, LA, Omaha.
Well, and the International Horse Show, which is for the FEI. Like if you're into equestrian worldwide, Omaha beat out London, Japan, all those other cities to have the FEI horse show. Yeah, it's definitely prepped us.
Yeah. So we're a city actually that can handle those massive customers coming in and kind of being downtown, and it's pretty great. We've got all the facilities to handle it as well. Edward, where's the event at, and how do you feel about? I mean, that's pretty tough going up against Berkshire Hathaway's event. How do you feel about that?
So I thought originally that we would draw people who are, I hoped I wasn't under any delusion. So we would actually draw people that were coming from Berkshire, like somehow they would decide, oh, I'm not, but there are really lines at Berkshire Hathaway that like people get shut out, right? And so if you don't get in the door, what are you going to do? You can just pop on over to Bitcoin Day. So it's at the Marriott at 102nd and Dodge. And so we're going to talk about mining, talk about trading, security, buying, selling. The mornings are going to be for kind of people just getting into it, and the afternoon's going to be for more advanced folks in the space. So,
and I think 99 for the morning, 149 for the afternoon. Is that right?
199 for the afternoon. Yep.
Okay, and then the whole thing 249.
That's correct. Yeah. Yep.
Cool.
And, yeah, I think so. Warren, as you mentioned, Warren is not. He's getting ready to retire or something, and him and Charlie, his partner, are they've spoken about it several times, and none of them have, or those two have at least, have not caught on to what's going down, and so they've spoken against, that they are not fans of it. So
yeah, it's not an investment though, right? I mean, let's just be really clear at this point. It's super crazy, but it so was the internet in 1997. Like, so when we were first talking about the internet in 93, 94, 95, I mean, I remember those days, and I was this big nerd, and I'm like, hey, this internet thing is coming, and AOL's got a door to it, and you go through CompuServe, and people are like, what the heck is that? Like, and companies started coming out, and remember all the IPOs that, and people are like, this is crazy, and it's nuts. We lived through it. Like, it happened. Like, and there were a few companies that came out on the back end. I was always super mad that I didn't participate more. Now, I was a poor college student, and I didn't have a lot of money to participate in it. But I was upset at myself that there were some things I could have done better. And so I've kind of committed after watching this run of Bitcoin and in the blockchain and some of these things with crypto. It's like, you know what? I'm just going to pay attention. Doesn't mean I need to bet the farm, but I'm going to pay attention, right, to what's going on.
Well, it's kind of like
make it the opposite end of your portfolio, right? On one end you got bonds, on the other end you got crypto. Like this is where you.
Yeah, part of your portfolio should be in
risky investment, right?
We're not giving investment advice. We are
risk.
not giving investment advice, but part of your portfolio should be super risky stuff, and I think crypto fits in that category.
It's that high risk part. It's not your entire portfolio, but it's part of it.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think it's like Jamie Dimon though. It's like, you know, he came out against Bitcoin recently, but the companies he owns or runs, they're investing in crypto, right? There's been evidence of that, and I suspect they're dabbling in blockchain stuff. And so for Warren, even though he is against it, or at least against the crypto side of it, his companies, I suspect somebody somewhere is working on blockchain stuff in one of his companies. And so whether he personally cares for it or not, it really is, you know.
Yeah. It's posturing. We're going to talk, Edward, we're going to talk about blockchain stuff because I think that's the more exciting, and actually as folks who are looking at crypto, you should be studying the blockchain, not the coins. Well, that's exciting and fun. The blockchain is really where it's at. So we're going to quiz you about that here a little bit later. I want to follow back up with you. Last time we talked with you, you had just deployed a new ATM to Lincoln. You have an ATM, a Bitcoin ATM in Omaha. And you've lived through a serious downturn, right, in this stuff. I want to ask you, how are the ATMs doing? You don't have to disclose any financials, but just tell me how you feel about that as an owner of those ATMs. And then what kind of traffic are you seeing? And does it trail off during something like this? And just kind of give me an update on what you're doing with your ATMs.
Was Lincoln, when I talked to you last, was that Lincoln?
You had just deployed Lincoln.
Okay,
yes.
because so now we're in Fargo as well. We did put one up in Fargo.
Hey, congratulations.
Thanks.
Nice.
Yeah. So we have 3, and Fargo actually in March we hit the number I was looking for. Pretty similar to Lincoln. I'm kind of using Lincoln as the gauge, and so that was March for Fargo. And then in terms of overall, February we hit a new high overall in February again, which it's funny because for me I keep track of the stats all the time, but I kind of leave myself a surprise at the end of the month to actually find out how we did. And so I kind of just play mental games of like, man, it's not looking good or whatever. And then at the end of the month, pleasantly surprised maybe. I think again, coming up on the end of the month, March, I think March will be a dip for us. I think maybe trailing off from December to February was we were trailing from December and the run up and stuff into February. And I think people are finally like, oh yeah, maybe the price isn't going to go anywhere or whatever, So yeah, but that's March, and I'm fine with the down month. We haven't had a down month in a while, so that's all right. So I'm looking forward to the rest of the year, and hopefully it goes back up. So.
They're in place. John Biggs had asked me via Messenger. He was pinging me. He's gotten all in on the mining side, and he said, I told him you were going to be on. He's like, so is Edward auctioned off the ATMs yet? So apparently not. Right?
No.
You're going to hold on to them.
Yeah. So we're actually, I don't remember if I told you. So Mike asked me if I was doing something. Oh, if I can't remember what he asked me. I was like, we are so crazy busy running right now, but we are finally launching the multifunction kiosk. That's kind of always been my dream for the past 2 years, is that we are always going to get out of just doing Bitcoin. And so the new kiosks will actually have a lot more functionality that will appeal to a broader audience. So that'll help kind of defray some of the risk in terms of our revenue. And then we're also finally offering going live with hosted mining. So we are folks that if you have 50 ASICs and are sick of the noise and sick of the heat, then we'll take those on and get them out of your basement or whatever. So that's maybe next time we can talk more about that after it's fully functional, but that's finally going live. So
yeah, I'm going to ask you about that here in just a second, because I know you guys have one. But when you from an ATM perspective, are you in a spot where you're thinking like, okay, we did Fargo, now we'd like to deploy a few more? And you don't have to disclose anything. But
that's fine. No, that's fine. We so the biggest hurdle has always been regulation, capital too, but regulation. And so and the fact that I knew we were kind of releasing a new line, and so having just the Bitcoin kiosk was a little bit of a short sell for us. So we have the regulation worked out now, and so the three that we have will probably be the only true ATMs. We have Bitcoin ATMs, and now that we have pretty much access to any state we want through some partnerships we're working on, now capital is really the only thing that's stopping us. So yeah, I think by the next time we chat, I should have some more news for us. So
cool. And from a positive cash flow standpoint, I'm assuming this is more than just an investment, that you are seeing some returns on these ATMs that are out there.
Yeah, so the ATMs, our markup, which people, I mean, I don't know, it depends on who you are. Some people think this is a steal, but like our markup is 8%, which relative to the Bitcoin ATM market, that is a steal. People I know are charging 14%. So we're, I've really tried hard to keep that rate steady or low, or as low as possible for folks, because I mean, we want to support the community. So but 8% doesn't go to our bottom line, but we have some costs involved in that. And then sometimes, I mean, we're hedging, so sometimes we take a risk, and sometimes we lose money on a transaction because of the price fluctuations. So so they are, I mean, they're not all paid off because we've just deployed some of them, but they are in the process of being paid off. I mean, we are cash flow positive in terms of the most part.
Great. Yeah. That's great. Do you feel like you have a faithful follower base, like you're getting it's the same people just repeating those actions, or are you getting kind of some fringe folks as well who are trying it out?
So I try not to keep track of our customers.
Yeah, that's true.
Much as possible.
Right.
So but I think I know, I'm not going to share, but I think I do know kind of what the number of customers we have, and kind of that rate. I mean, it grows a little each month, but yeah, I mean, those customers it's not growing too dramatically at this point, because people are, people come back.
This is not hot and sexy right now, right?
Well, it's not growing because, like, what would precipitate somebody getting involved, I guess, is my question. It's like, either they move into town or somebody sends them there. We are going to do some Facebook ads, but for the most part, it's a niche. And so,
so I'm a Coinbase user, and I think Mike is too. And if we want to onboard our cash or US dollars to Bitcoin, that's the most convenient way. Why would I use your ATM as opposed to just onboarding it through Coinbase?
So I was thinking about this, I was talking to somebody about this the other day, and the best analogy, there's two. One is just, we live in a microwave culture and people just want things instantaneously. So Coinbase, whether, even just to onboard, it takes a while. Then transactions may or may not take a little while longer to get your dollars up there. It's not drastic, but what they said was, there are the fact that you buy there are people that buy beer and milk and candy bars in a gas station instead of going to a grocery store, which is more, you save all your money, you go on a grocery trip, you buy all your groceries, and then you go home and you have all that stuff at home. Well, why do people go and just buy it at a gas station? It's just this instant, I want it now mentality. And some people, especially if you're cash based, that is the mentality. And so they don't want to go to the grocery store. They want to go to the gas station and buy their stuff, and because it's closer or whatever.
So it would be, go ahead, Mike.
And I thought of the perfect instance of this over Christmas, actually, because as a fun thing, my grandfather likes investments, all that sort of stuff, high risk stuff. He just thinks it's all fun. So we wanted to get him some Bitcoin. And well, it wasn't me really that wanted to get it. My mother wanted to get him some Bitcoin, and she called me, how do I do this? How do I go about it? The ATM is the perfect avenue, I think, for someone like my mom who hates having online accounts. Hey, she can go and probably do this. The one thing I was going to ask you that I don't know if we probably have talked about this in the past, but like, what is, like, as far as knowing your customer, what is involved with setting up an account at one of your ATMs? If my mom were to walk up and want to buy a half a Bitcoin for someone, is it a pretty easy transaction? And you've said it's instant, because that would be amazing. Basically, the long story short, we went through, she's like, well, can you just get it through your Coinbase account? I already had the account, and it was instant in that regard. But had she not had me, there might have been an easier way to go about it and go through the ATM.
So the nice thing about the ATM in your scenario, it would be nice because she would get the receipt with the public and private key on it, and then she could just give him that instead of
he doesn't need a wallet. That's what I like about that transaction right there. Is we were worried about, okay, so I'm holding it for him. It's this weird transaction. So like you said, she could just hand him that piece of paper and he has it.
Yep. Yeah. If you're the custodian of funds, you better look out for SEC or somebody to come.
Yeah. No, I'm not. Yeah. If that were the case, if that had been what we would have done, yeah, I might have to worry about that.
So yeah, in our as far as compliance and regulation goes, so she would not have been able to buy half a Bitcoin necessarily, because we do have limits of what you can buy a day. So I guess at today's price, we're getting closer to that.
But who's imposing those limits? Is that you guys yourself decide that the risk of you guys going beyond this is on you, or who?
No. We're a money services business. So if we have requirements from the federal government, depending on what the transactions are. So we do, and most of our transactions are like $200 to $500 really. That's the average transaction. So most people, which is fine. All we need is a phone. Like we don't even need anything really, but we do, in that process, we get a phone number out of them for that amount. And so if you want to go beyond $2,000, then we require more ID, we require a driver's license. And then the daily limit is 3,000, and that's from the federal government. So it's the same. I use the candy bar, the vending machine analogy a lot of like, we're just selling a candy bar. It just happens to be a $500 candy bar or something expensive. You get go to the airport and get an iPod out of the vending machines nowadays. It's a $300 iPod.
Right.
And so nobody's reporting you or trying to, register that transaction for a $300 iPod. And so that's pretty much the same with us.
So, and you don't have to get into this if you don't want to, but what do you think qualifies you? What qualifies you guys as a money services company that has to qualify and has to meet all these demands of the regulation in the government?
Yeah, that is a very good question. It is the desire to just play it safe.
Okay.
I spent a lot of time researching.
I like that answer, but I just didn't know what the.
Yeah, I spent a lot of time researching, and obviously since we started 4 years ago until now, it hasn't gotten any better, right? It was just the right decision, and it's a little nerve wracking. I mean, you are showing up on the radar at that point, and but it's not been a problem. I mean, there's nothing. Yeah.
Well, and there are stories the opposite way of people who didn't, and it turned out.
Right. Yeah.
It probably pays to be a little more conservative than less, right?
Especially if you're making this your business, like it,
right on. Yeah, and we're only going to get, and Edward, you can correct me if I'm wrong. We're only going to get more regulated, right? In this industry.
I would agree. I think as long as the regulation is the right type of regulation, I'm okay with that. But I mean, if they get, and they're obviously doing their due diligence and exploring what it is and how it works. They're trying to learn, 9 years after the fact. It's like we testified at the Nebraska legislature about a month ago. There were a couple of bills up for discussion there, and a bunch of us showed up and testified. And that was one of the points I made is we're 9 years into this, and you guys are just now asking these questions. Like, we've operated fine, survived without you guys. So please have a light hand in all this, because it's not that scary, and there's we're just trying to legitimize it and make sure that people that are involved are doing the right thing. And so we are the gatekeepers or policemen in the scenario. So,
well, and the fact that you guys have been following the rules even when you technically might not have had to should show a lot on people in your industry.
Sure. Yeah.
I've been listening to a podcaster video, a YouTube guy, Carter Thomas, and he actually thinks some regulation is healthy for crypto because it gives us some legitimacy in the investment space, so that ETFs can come in and other larger money can come in. Agree? Disagree?
No, I think from that perspective, like just as a purist or libertarian or whatever, like do I want it? Not really, but I mean, I don't want to support like terrorism. I don't want to support money laundering. Like there is a patriotic aspect to all this, and so I'm. If it's the right regulation, it's fine. I mean, I posted on LinkedIn about Arizona, what they're doing from a fintech regulation compliance. And I'm actually speaking at a Department of Banking event tomorrow about regulation in fintech, because Nebraska is trying to figure out what to do. And so I think it could be done. I think it can be done all right.
Yeah,
no,
I like
some
it.
oversight is good, I think, but that kind of flies a little bit in the face of why this started. So it seems a little odd, right? But I kind of agree with them that I do think if we're going to see real money come into this, we're going to need some oversight, just so people feel comfortable.
But I'm torn, or I'm
Right
speaking on both sides of the mouth, because I'm approaching it as a business and I want it to be legitimized. But I think there is enough. I still think anybody that wants to get into it and not be on the radar can still do that. There's nothing they're going to do to stop that. And so for me as a business, I want to play by the rules. But as an individual, if I were not involved in the industry that way, then I would still be okay, like buying it and feel safe buying it, I guess. So.
No, the internal workings are still the same.
Yep.
When you look at other states, we have an international audience, but a big one here in the United States. When you look at other states that are doing well with crypto, that are being progressive with it, who do you kind of look to as the leader? I mean, maybe Nebraska is the leader, but who do you look for as the leader? I think we're probably out ahead of this in some ways. You guys are doing some great work around this, but who else is leading the way around? And if I was listening to this in other parts of the country, what would I look for?
I think one of the biggest challenges that some of even the legislation that was up in the legislature was, what if anything do you have to do to be a money transmitter? And some of the technical aspects of blockchain don't fit into any of those traditional systems, and so you can't really grandfather us in my opinion. You've got to write stuff that deals specifically with like private keys, right? There's no comparison for private keys, and so if you are, and especially when it comes to blockchain and not Bitcoin, you're holding tokens, your app holds tokens or something like that, right? You're not holding cash, so then what do you call a token if it's not money? It's not even a cryptocurrency necessarily. So I think it needs to be from scratch, and I think it needs to be really short and sweet, and so like Arizona was the one I mentioned. Wyoming has done a good job of basically saying, hey, if you're on a blockchain, or hey, you're in cryptocurrency, we know you're not a bank. We know you, if you hold funds, you need to maybe comply with some of the rules that are out there. But we understand that this is a little different, and we're okay with that. And you're not a bank, so you don't have to go to that great distance, I guess is what I would say. So the app, like they're not putting regulations upon software developers. And so, the question is, are you a software developer? Or are you an investment institution? And so trying to make those distinctions as broadly as possible, I think, is important.
Well, this makes me wonder. So, like, we have Delaware, which is where most businesses are incorporated for the reasons because the case law in Delaware is so large for businesses. Is there going to be a state where, like, the crypto companies all incorporated because the case law in that state, Wyoming, for example, is so strong in favor of crypto, right? Like in Delaware, it's in favor of corporations. That's why people incorporate there. There could totally be another state where it's favorable for companies like you guys to incorporate in. And if you guys were to be challenged, you could go back to that state and they favor your types of companies.
So both Kansas and Colorado have done a decent job of saying, hey, money transmission does not apply to you, so go and have peace. And so, but that, I think the problem with that is when they just say it doesn't apply to you, at some point when the SEC is contradicting that, or the IRS is contradicting that,
rules. Yep.
It makes people nervous, because they say, well, you haven't come back and revisited it, or you haven't defined it. You've just said it doesn't apply, but the IRS is saying something different. So I think that is a problem, but I think it's, if you're in states right now, it's good for you, I guess. And I don't think people necessarily flock to one state. I haven't really seen that. I think it'll be more of just a few states get blacklisted, like we saw with New York, right? So you don't start a crypto company in New York right now. So I think if you come down too hard, you're going to have people run away. But I think most of the other states are pretty good about, so far, if they've said something, it hasn't been too harsh. California and New York are probably the worst in my mind.
Interesting. It's good to know. We got listeners all over. Just kind of thinking, are you seeing, so, you guys kind of have like an ATM network at this point, right? Lincoln, Fargo, Omaha, which is pretty cool. Yeah. Is that a trend that's happening? Are you seeing other ATMs being set up, or are you guys kind of far ahead of the trend?
Oh no, we're behind. We're pretty small in the space. I mean, our there's always you talk about the long tail on Amazon, right? There's always the products that don't sell very often, but somebody makes a lot of money because they have those products and a lot of them or whatever, So I think we're going after, call it the middle market, in terms of everybody else is going after the big states or big cities. I mean, so we're intentionally going after the medium-sized cities to fill in the gaps, basically. And but as far as growth in the ATM count, that has gone up quite drastically. But again, I don't know how much of that was from people reinvesting their profits from December, right? And so I think that is going to trail off as far as the rate of deployment. It'll trail off a little bit and just be steady for a while. And I think eventually, once the price starts going up again and volume starts going up transaction-wise, and people are making money on the Bitcoin they hold, they'll buy more kiosks and keep deploying them.
Yeah. All right. You teased us a little bit. We're going to talk more about that in the post show. Yeah. So just a reminder, if you're listening to this through the RSS feed on your iTunes or whatever, however you're listening to it, you want to head over to theaverageguy.tv/support, because we're going to do a whole section on kind of coin and talk about the speculative nature of it and where we think the market is going. That's all going to be in the post show. So head over to theaverageguy.tv/support. That'll be able for free, everybody, by the way. Typically we ask $1 for that, but this time, because Edward's on and we love having Edward on our show, it's free for everybody. Edward, when I was at your place, I don't know, seems maybe 6 weeks ago, it's been a while, you had an ASIC miner set up. Can you talk a little bit about that? I mean, it seems a little crazy to be doing ASIC mining right now just because prices are so depressed, but what have you been mining? What are you using the ASIC for? What's going on there?
So I think the price that you shut them off is from my understanding, I haven't actually run the numbers myself, is around $5,000. So we are getting close to that, but that's part of why we are switching from hosting our own to hosting for other people. I mean, if they make that decision, that's on them. I hate to see them lose money, but we have the facilities in terms of electric and cooling, and so we want to put those in, and we get real dollars off that, right? And we obviously mine our own equipment, have our own mining equipment there too, so we can profit off of or get the coins. The nice thing about our mining is that it goes to our kiosks, so we are not, most of it, I should say. So we're not totally hodling, right? And so we have a need for Bitcoin, and so even if it does dips a little below 5,000 or something like that, we can still it's still benefit to us because it's providing inventory that we'd have to buy anyways. So that's one of the biggest reasons we mine is for inventory, but also I want inventory to sell. But then I also, like I was telling Mike earlier, like these prices, like I'm still fine with buying or mining, and I think mining is just a more steady way of averaging in, or at least getting into the space. So.
Yeah, it's been my philosophy. I bought these 4 cards. We've been mining all the way down. They're getting less and less profitable, and it's scary. Like right now, like I actually shut them off because it's like I can't look at those numbers. You're like, yeah, there's no way I'm making any money at this point. I'm paying for it, although it's buying coin, right? And it's still buying stuff. So
the other difference is that since we get industrial rates on electric, then that is also like we're not paying residential electric rates. So
we pay about 11.5 cents an hour on residential. What do you?
We pay about 6 in the winter.
Wow. So maybe I'll bring. Well, maybe I should bring a rig or two.
That's not what you pay. So if I did the math, you probably would actually pay the same amount in our space as you would in your space. So, but for an ASIC owner, that's important because these things are too loud for your house, basically. So
they are super loud.
Video cards you're okay with, but if you're trying to run ASICs at home, that doesn't work so well.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, it's actually pretty quiet in this space. The fans kick up a little bit. I do turn them off for the podcast, but I've forgotten in several weeks. Mike and I have been podcasting and I forgot to turn them off, and they've been doing just fine. So it's not too bad. Have you had many takers, or did you just start that?
Just started. Yeah, we're gonna. I've got it on the alpha site right now, but it's gonna launch it as its own entity. But each state, what I've discovered, and again, a lot of this stuff I think is because of the price and people were profitable, so they were like, starting things. But I think each state is going to have its own. There is something to be said for the geolocating of these close to you, and so I think each state is going to have its own mining farm like we have, and so. It's not like we're competing on price a little bit, but it's just a matter of, hey, I can drop these off to Edward and he'll get them plugged in. I'm not shipping them off to another state, right? So if we're trying to get the local market. That's part of the play.
And you're mining Bitcoin, right? These ASICs are mining Bitcoin.
It's up to them. I mean, so Bitmain's supposed to have an Ethereum miner coming out. They already have an ASIC, Bitcoin and Litecoin. So most people are mining Bitcoin and Litecoin with their ASICs.
Cool. We'll have to keep track of that. I think that's an interesting service that you guys. I don't think I would have thought of that in this market. Like, you think folks buy them. Of course, we've been following Sia Coin in this community because it's a storage based coin, and it's kind of interesting, and it's a shit show there. It's super interesting what's going on with that community. It's just crazy. But they have had a run of ASIC miners come in, and they're on their second or third competing company that's providing these ASICs, and they're driving down the price. And of course, the difficulty is going way up. And everybody, I just saw on their Facebook group this morning, man, I was making 1,500 coins a day, and today I'm making whatever half of that is, 625 or 675, whatever that is. And it was like, yeah, guys, that's kind of how it works. Like, it's a tough world out there.
Yeah, you said I saw the miners get released, but why, how has that played? You just said it, but like, why or how has that played into the economics of it?
There are no economics to this. Like, it's, the advantage to SIA, right, is peer-to-peer storage. That's what it is. There's no advantage to the coin getting more expensive because they're using it as payment for storage. Now, in theory, if you had an ASIC miner and you wanted to kind of protect your cost of storage over time, you could mine on this and then use that, right? Use those funds. You could, so say I went out and I mined 100,000 SIA coins. I would have enough storage and backup for whatever, right? I mean, fill that in a year, 2 years, whatever, right? And so now today, you think you go on Amazon, the average consumer is probably paying $15 to $20 a month for that service. So you're talking $200 to $250 a year. Man, that payoff's a long time. For an ASIC, right? The typical ASIC. Mike, when you were looking at ASICs, what were the price on those things?
I don't know the price, but I know it was a lot shorter payoff period. It was like 3 months. I mean, back when.
But the price was good. Edward, what are ASICs running? I mean, just generally, those are $2,000 or $3,000.
No, the price has been dropping because of the coin prices, and so it's about $1,000 to $2,000 nowadays.
Oh, yeah, well, still $200 a year, to even at $250, you're talking a couple year, 3-4 year payoff right now.
Why do you what's the SIA coin miners? How do they? Why did they create a miner? Is it because of the hash that the SIA uses? Was it just easiest to create that miner because that's the easiest hash, or was there actually demand? Or
it's been weird because SIA has been the absolute unsexiest coin ever, and I'm not even sure the business model. We're going to talk about this here in a second when we talk about blockchain. That its business model of peer-to-peer storage is not really viable. We've done this before in this space. We did it when there was no blockchain, and it didn't work. And people are just not that comfortable. Now, they could pivot and come up with something interesting, and their supporters are all like, this is going to be huge. It's a pump and dump type thing. This is going to be huge. This is going to be great. We listen to them, and you're like, I don't think so. That's not the business model here. Which, again, I would know nothing if I hadn't participated in this community. done some mining, and had a wallet, because you have to kind of be in this to even care about it, or you just don't. You're like, whatever. These guys are crazy. But it's been an experience to watch this go on, right? I've learned a ton about communities and blockchain just by watching this happen. So yeah, Edward, I honestly, they're going to have to pivot on their business model to have it make any sense. See a coin today, a penny, maybe less. I don't know, Mike. I think I'd have to look it up. 1.2 maybe cents.
I can tell you right now,
something like that. I mean, and so the economics of it,
1 cent, not even 1 point anything.
The economics of it are just stupid, and of course, people have been buying it on the way down, kind of thinking, oh, there's going to be an alt season and it's going to be awesome, and you know what? It still could be. Like we could do another alt run. I think. Yeah. I think there's actually enough. Oh, this is going to save this for the post show. Sorry. Okay, let's not talk about this. Hold on. All of a sudden, I went down. Okay, so ASIC miners. Do you think for most people, is now a good time to get into ASIC mining because coin prices are down? Is it, or do you just say don't? The average person shouldn't even think about an ASIC.
If I think everything pretty much travels along the same path in terms of price, hash rate, and the miner pricing. And so I don't necessarily think there's a bad time, because it's a long-term play. Are you bullish or bearish on the whole thing? And so if it's just as good as an option as any to get into it, and the break even is 10 months or whatever, I can't remember what the break even is, but so it's not there isn't really a bad time, but it's just a matter of how are you going to accumulate your coins and where do you see the price going? That's the question.
Uyghur, would you jump on an ASIC at this point, knowing what you know? Do you think you were talking about this at one point, my friend?
I was, and the answer has changed to no. No, I don't think I would now. For the same reason, though, I wouldn't jump on graphics cards right now. It's just not something I'm looking to get back into. I like the Burst coin just because it's easier. Yeah. It's a little bit cheap right now to get into, right? You can get a lot of space for relatively cheap.
Yeah, space is still cheap.
Yeah, but that's just me. I'm not going to jump back into the heavy investments right now into the mining sphere.
Yeah, no,
I would take that money though, and I would put it back into the market. That's what I would do.
Okay, hold that thought. We're going to talk about it post show. Yeah, it's so hard to separate these two, isn't it?
It is. It's really hard.
Super hard to separate. We're gonna do it though. Save that for the post show. I will say I just recorded an episode that was not released yet as of this recording with Dave McCabe on Reset. So if you haven't gone over there and subscribed to Reset, I don't know why you wouldn't. It's Dave. He does a great job. And head over and subscribe to Reset. I'm on there. We do an hour and 15 minutes on Burst. Mike, we kind of covered everything we've learned. Dave and I talk through, and we come to the conclusion that it's just a ton of fun. Like, it's just, we would do this because we're server and storage nerds.
Totally. That's why I'm doing it too.
Right on. And so it's a ton of fun. And I've had more fun in the community working with people. It's brought the joy back to some community work that frankly had just died. Like we had stopped talking to each other about this kind of stuff, and we hadn't found that common storage thing to rally around. So I don't really care if Burst ever does anything. It's just been a ton of fun. I can sell this equipment if I want to, or I can build it. I mean, I have 115 terabytes here, so I could build a pretty sweet server farm on my. It's all USB, so that's not true either. But it's a ton of fun at all.
Shuck them and put them internal, and you're good.
They're not even good for shucking.
No, they're not.
To be honest with you, no, these drives are not very good. So, but they make great Burst drives once you get them set up and working, and they're just sipping power, and it's pretty awesome. So. We talk about the whole setup process and how to do it over on Reset. It may not be out yet, but you can head over to Reset and get that downloaded. Edward, I wanted to quiz you on a few interesting blockchain implementations, because I think, to be honest, this is really where the nerdery is. Like the coin stuff is a distraction, just to be honest. It's just it's fun. It's gambling. It's fun, but it's a huge distraction. I think for people thinking about blockchain or thinking about cryptocurrency today, I think as smart consumers, we should be focusing more on the technology behind the blockchain than we should be on what's going on with the coin stuff. That's, like I said, that's just distracting. When you look out there and you think about, there's just a crap load of coins now, a crap load of blockchains. and you think about what's exciting to you about technology that's being put on top of the blockchain to actually make this viable. We had tons of, including pets.com, that came out during the .com era that went absolutely nowhere. They had a sock and a puppet, and they made a Super Bowl ad, and then they went out of business, right? We're going to see that in the crypto space. Some of them are going to survive. And I'm not asking you to predict that, but I am kind of saying right now, today, when you think about blockchain technologies, what are a few projects you're seeing that you actually get excited about? I'm sure you're going to talk about it at this conference, but what do you get excited about?
Well, actually, I mean, the Bitcoin Day Omaha, we're trying to focus almost entirely on the crypto. I mean, we want to make it, how can you potentially make money, right? No guarantees, but how can you potentially make money? So the Bitcoin Day Omaha will be almost entirely about.
Okay,
about
so
Bitcoin.
that'll be more coin. That'll be our post-show conversation. But when you think about blockchain, what do you get interested in?
Now, we do have in August, we will be talking about blockchain, but we can talk about that closer to August. For the hackathon coming up, which is it's a corporate event, so it's been interesting to talk to the participant, these corporate innovation teams who are sending five other IT people over to take a use case and turn it into a prototype. Basically, I mean, that's the entire purpose of the event. Go from Friday to Sunday, pretty much like a regular hackathon, and have a pitch competition at the end. You can win some prizes, but it's we're looking at, we have Assurity Insurance out of Lincoln, Mutual of Omaha is involved, Nelnet's involved, Payment Springs involved. Those are both Lincoln companies. But
hold on before you go on. Mutual of Omaha, gigantic old money company, by the way. Nelnet, startup from 10 years ago, but maybe the one of the largest student loan organizations in America,
and with an owner who is very old money.
So I mean, the fact that you got those two companies thinking about this should be a kind of a wake-up call to some people, like, ooh, maybe the blockchain's legit if we've got some of these kind of companies thinking about it.
I can, and it's not gonna let me. Anyways, it's I can get you the link later. So it's been interesting to talk to them about what they're thinking about using it for. And I think what hasn't really been, we don't have any logistics companies, but I think when we we'll hopefully have an event in Kansas City as well. And so BNSF is down there, and so hopefully we'll have some interest from some logistics folks. And then actually on the coast, we're having one in Atlanta coming up. So hopefully we'll have some logistics companies get involved. But that's what I'm most interested in now. So logistics, and then which goes into like you can go shipping route, you can go the inventory route. Locally here, the folks that are that I've talked to so far it's been a lot of business process, smart contracts, and I think where we're at now, while everybody says or thinks like the blockchain is the safe route because there's no crypto involved, no prices involved, I still think that even the people we're talking to, not only do you have to wrestle with the concept, but you have to wrestle with the reality that in 20 years, this will be a common thing. And you've got to buy in or have some faith that will or will not happen. It's just almost like the same as having faith that the price will go back to $20 or $30 or $40,000. You've got to think that other people are going to buy into this and grasp it, which is difficult for some folks. Like I'm not like some high pressure salesman or anything, but like maybe it's inevitable, hopefully. And so that's where I think the biggest challenge has been for people who hear the blockchain and think, nobody's ever going to use that. It's just a fad or just a Bitcoin thing or something like that, right? So,
yeah, I actually think the coin side of it is the fad, and the blockchain is the real deal. Like I know it's hard to separate one without the other, right? They kind of come together in some cases, but the legitimate business work in this is in the blockchain. And
I think there's two entirely different audiences though, because you're gonna have the people that are involved in Bitcoin are involved because they want their money, freedom for their money, right? To unshackled from the Fed, et cetera, and corrupt, dictators in Africa, et cetera. Like that's an entirely different market then. So, but then when you get into like market share, there is a potential where if you've got the JP Morgans, the UPs, and those guys that are investing in this and building these, that there is this the selling process is farther along in terms of, or excuse me, is not as far as long as in the blockchain space, because you've got to get into the C-suites and talk to these people and say, this is what's happening, this is what's been happening, this is where it's going, versus anybody can go buy some coins, right? So in terms of potential, I don't know. I'd have to think more about like which one I think actually has more. I think the nicer thing about blockchain, or the way to say it might be, is that with blockchain you have more sure money getting into it, because you've got VCs or large firms, huge corporations getting into it, and that's a little more of a stable income than Bitcoin, which is a bunch of kids in their basement buying coins. That's a little flakier, so.
Did you just call me a kid in my basement? Is that what you just did?
I think he
Uyghur.
did. I think he did. I think that's what he called us.
I was talking about Mike.
Oh, okay. Like, that's a lot better. Dang.
Oh, that's
right.
No, you're right, Edward.
Well, I'm gonna shut down for tonight. I'll
go grab a beer, Mike.
Yeah, I'm gonna grab another beer.
Kid in your basement. Hey, kid, go get
kid drinking my LaCroix.
Yeah, the throw up apricot water. You're right, Edward, in the sense that there is still, and sometimes I forget about this, there's still this kind of mission to democratize, I don't know if that's the right word, currency, a global currency. And I do forget about that sometimes. I am excited, like, as I've been watching this space now over the last year, I am excited because I feel like we're working out some real issues, and that we've been tested, like this run up in December that we had really tested the networks. And we learned a ton, like they're not ready, pretty much. And so it was like, oh, okay, well, we're going to have to do some things. We stress tested the network and we learned a bunch of things about it. And now we're pulling back. So this pullback is actually probably kind of helpful. We're watching a whole bunch of things kind of happen in the various, we saw a consolidation of Bitcoin private, right? Which was a Z Classic and a Bitcoin for maybe the first time. We saw two instead of a fork, we saw a spoon, right? It kind of came together. I don't know if that's right, but I just made it up.
I got it. I like it.
Yeah. It came together as one. And like that had never, for the most part, been done that way, right? And that's a great test. Whether it survives or not, in some ways is irrelevant. It's great that we're trying these kinds of things out. The fact that we're forking so much, the fact that we're trying these different things, many of these things will go away. The world probably cannot support as many blockchains and as many coins that are out today. Maybe they can, but probably they can't. But I think, don't you think that just the experimentation that's going on in the blockchain is worth it for what we're doing right now?
Yeah, I think even if you have a blockchain project that's internal, like with inside a bank or whatever, there is you still have the opportunity, or what I see happening is that you have to you either self-mine, meaning all the different banks mine their own coins, or do proof of stake or whatever, or at some point you have a product that is, even if you have the full intentions to make it a private thing, you eventually have this. So I'll give you an example, and I've not talked to them. I've introduced myself once, but Spreetail is a company out of Lincoln, and they're really heavy into retail, or even like PayPal or Proxybid. Talk about those guys. Right. Like you have these scenarios where even if they did something internally that makes sense, if they're going to open it up to an outside vendor, they either have to somehow convince that vendor to get some coins that are Spreetail coins, or they have to just say, oh, okay, you have some Ethereum because you're paying all your other vendors in Ethereum. Well, we'll take your Ethereum for our blockchain too. And so then you have that really easy segue into connection, to a public blockchain. That's kind of what I see happening. Like their best intentions to do something with a private blockchain. At some point, all your vendors are using Ethereum, so you're going to accept Ethereum or Litecoin or whatever. Ethereum, I think, makes the most sense. So I think that's why I think that as much as they may resist the economics of it at some point, why would they take your US dollars in ACH or credit cards and pay those fees if you've already got something that basically plugs into your entire infrastructure already? So, yeah.
Do you think we get to a point where you have some companies like just as this starts to catch on and people start to use the blockchain for various reasons, you get companies who get left behind and they need a blockchain, and so they may consume. In other words, they may find a blockchain that is struggling and say, "Hey, maybe take it down the route of a Ripple." In other
Yeah.
words, like we're going to consume you, you're going to go private.
Yeah.
We may allow some outside mining because we need the network secure. Is that viable? I mean, or am I making that up?
Well, we haven't even talked about the idea of do you need a blockchain, right? That's a whole other topic we can touch on. And then also there's an example right now of there's a coin called Nautilus coin, and one of the, I don't know if it's CTO or key founders or one of the key people actually passed, from what I understand. And so this Nautilus coin is listed on Poloniex and it's not active, and nobody's working on it. And so I talked to my buddy, he's in the space, and I was like, somebody needs to take over Nautilus coin. Like everybody's, some people have a bunch of them. They're ticked that they can't do anything with them now. Somebody could come in and rebrand it, just like Dash did with Dark Coin or whatever they called it. Right? They just rebranded, and so somebody could come in, rebrand it, get the network effect, and get the source code, and make a coin really easily and really quickly. And I don't. So that is a great example of what you just described. I don't have the money to go buy a coin, but yeah.
Yeah, well, it takes some effort. You're gonna not only have to go in there and convince people. I mean, you're gonna have to do some development work on it. You're gonna have to convince people that this is legit. You're gonna have to gather a community around it. I mean, all that stuff takes time and money and effort.
Yeah.
It's a ton of work. I think. I mean, the Bitcoin private guys did an enormous amount of work to get, and I'm not even sure it's all the way done yet. In a lot of ways, I think we have a lot of things that still need to be worked out, including. I don't know if you saw in their white paper, they have presented that they're going to start going back. And I don't know if I'm sure I'm getting this terminology wrong, but there have been many blocks that have been mined on Bitcoin that are now not empty, but are lost.
Mm.
And they're going to remine those like kind of on Bitcoin private, because no one will ever be able to claim them, right? They are in wallets that are defunct.
Huh.
And they're starting with like 0.04% of the wallets or something like that. And they're going to do some tests on like, can they go back and recover those blocks? It's interesting, right?
Yeah.
Right or wrong. It's interesting.
Well, that's when all the NEM got hacked in Japan. They supposedly there was some conspiracy where they were going to go and like go retro, go back on the chain and start over before the hack, and people got ticked about that.
Well, it's an interesting thing, because I think on paper it makes sense. You're like, yeah, I bet there are some wallets. It's not malicious. It's value that has disappeared. They printed a US dollar and it got burned in a fire. Right.
I want to know more, because how do you know nobody has the private key for that?
That's the problem.
We talked about that last week.
Yeah, that's the problem. And so I think and I don't understand all the technology, but apparently they have some way of detecting that it's in a wallet that's no longer functional.
Okay.
I don't understand that technology. I'll be honest with you. I don't, but it's still an interesting conundrum. And it's still one of those things you kind of go, yeah, I guess that is kind of interesting. And with Z Classic combining to become Bitcoin private, it was like I said, it was the first time we put two together. And so you now had whatever Bitcoin you owned plus whatever Z Classic you owned, you got, you got this new, an instance of this new Bitcoin private. It will be interesting to see what they can do with that. I think they're trying to do some things as well to compete in the Bitcoin space. To me, that's an example of an interesting dev team doing some cool things with a blockchain, where the coin is the result. And yeah, people can trade and buy and sell and all those kind of things. But these devs are very, very active on this and are doing some interesting things that are I think that will be important in the future for the development of the blockchain. They're trying different stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we had, I didn't mention this, but there was a while there talking about, I mean, it's just wonderful now with transaction speeds and like fees right now on the Bitcoin network. But for a while there, so we have a miner's fee because we pay X amount of dollars to send money if you're, let me think here, if you're selling whatever. There's a miner's fee. We have to pay miner's fee, so send your Bitcoin. So for a while there, we had to raise that miner's fee because we were just getting,
getting hammered
in terms of
what transaction fee was through the roof.
Yeah, exactly. So, but that's under control pretty much now. But so I mean, we didn't turn the kiosk off, right? That was the alternative. But or we had to pass on that fee to the customers, and that's what we wound up doing. I didn't like to do it, but
it was part of the economics of it was part of the economics of this. But I'm super glad we went through that. It's a test.
Mm-hmm.
And you just don't know how robust your network is until you actually get a real test on it. I think Bitcoin and all of crypto will be better that we had a run up, whether it ever comes back or not. The whole network will be better off that we had this run up.
Yeah.
And it put some stress on the network, and I think it made everybody better. I think it made crypto better.
Mm-hmm.
We learned a ton of stuff through it, so I think it was good. Any other blockchain projects?
Yeah, I was gonna say for some of us, though, that wasn't our first. That's not our first. This is not an uncommon event, and probably won't be your last one either. So
right, yeah. But I think for most that are in it now, it was their first.
It's a broader audience.
The one before it, there was one last summer, right? There was a little run up for summer.
I think like 2015.
There was one there too. There's probably 3 or 4 or 5. You look at them now, and they're just little tiny because the current one was so big. But I do think now, I wasn't around for those. You were.
Yeah.
Were they as much trouble for Bitcoin when those things were going up? Did they see the transaction problems? Was there enough people testing the network where it mattered?
Yeah, it wasn't. No, they weren't scaling problems. I was mainly referring to the price of going through that, but the price does affect the number of users you have out there, psychology and stuff like that. But as far as technologically, it wasn't as big a deal back then.
Well, and exposure, right? Like we have CNBC on our TVs all the time at work, and they were covering Bitcoin for a good 45 minutes today. I walked in, I was like, whoa, what is this? And they're showing literally the Coinbase price for Bitcoin. And I'm like, when have we had this? Right? And I'm sure, all the other advisors are kind of like, oh, geez, why do we need to hear about this? But in a sense, we didn't have this type of exposure during the 15 or any of those run-ups. And
that's true. That's for sure.
So we just hear about it a lot more, and it causes a lot more panic, and it probably has a lot bigger effect on the actual price, right? Because the more they all talk about it, the more people sell or buy, and we drastically change this up and down because of the exposure.
Yeah. I think it does. I think the highs are higher or lows are lower.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
It's super interesting. Any other blockchain projects?
This is not purely it's some crypto supposedly as well, but I think it's the CEO of it's escaped me now. Uber is building a coin, and so stuff like that is cool. It's not truly blockchain related, but trying to figure out, trying to fix all of Bitcoin's problems or whatever. That kind of like you were talking about. If people are doing things that are innovative that we haven't had to do before, really.
It's competition, which I think is good. Like, it's causing people to think through, you think like a Feather coin, which will probably never go anywhere. But it's when Bitcoin was having its issues, it was saying, hey, look, we are light and our transaction speeds are fast. And that puts pressure on others and other dev teams to go, oh, well, okay, maybe we need to rethink the software, because we have to remember that at the end of the day, this is really just a piece of software, right? Doing its thing.
It is talking about this, the CEOs and kind of the executive suites, that it is as part of why I think things like the blockathon are important or helpful, because they aren't. Some people do just want to develop it internally, right? I don't know. As far as the players that will eventually, like Kyle Tutt, for instance, he's in here in Omaha too. He's working on an ag project, building basically a tracking system for farm data. So all the data on the farm, he's feeding that into a blockchain and stuff like that. You can't really talk about Nebraska without talking about ag, and that certainly applies to blockchain stuff as well. Things like that are exciting that that data is now all getting fed into like John Deere, for instance, right? There's this whole hullabaloo about John Deere, how they have this proprietary software on their tractors. They own your data on your tractors. So no matter how much you try to do it open source, that is a challenge. But something like blockchain does give you some, let's say, economy of scale in terms of working with other folks to combine that data and work together to take on somebody like a John Deere that is kind of the bully in that space. So
that's weird to think of it that way, but that's the economy in that farming community. And you're right, Mike and I don't emphasize ag at all, but it's tough to separate that here when we get in our business community in Omaha. How heavy the ag influence is here. And it's just a big deal when we think about Iowa, Nebraska, Kansas, and Missouri. The Silicon Prairie is what we call that on the tech side, but there's more farmers than there are people living in the big cities. And so it's
I'm more of an international guy than a John Deere guy, but I mean, whatever, teach his own.
Oh no, John Deere. If it's not green,
right?
You should figure out a tie-in for ag. Have some farmer that's really into tech come on here and tell you what he does.
I need to find someone who will come on and talk about that. That'd be an awesome tie-in. I had a gal on the hook to talk about that. They have an Uber for rural communities, right? And we just
Liberty.
Liberty. It never really worked out, so we just didn't make a connection. But
and
because
my father-in-law is a farmer, right? Like my wife's family's a farm family from southeast Nebraska, and he would love me to come down there and implement more of this. He thinks it's interesting and he sees the benefits, has no interest in doing it himself, even to the point where even his tractor has his combine, everything has the ability to everything automated, and he still does the manual. Just because that's the way he learned. That's the way they've been doing it for forever. So why change now? So I think it would be interesting to find someone from that community that has the tech background, that they've actually implemented it, and see the returns they're getting on it, right? Is it making a difference in what they're doing?
Yeah, maybe ask Mike and see if he knows if there's some young whippersnapper. Hey,
yeah, right.
Is there a whippersnapper in there?
Who's the guy running those tech self-automated combines or whatever? So
hey, Edward, did you see John Oliver's take on crypto? What'd you think of that?
Speaking of that, you guys should go to the farm and you guys should do an on-site podcast of like driving a combine and doing all that fun stuff.
There we go. Jim, you can come down anytime.
We could crush it on the video side if we did like a vlog style.
Oh, for
video.
sure.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that would be dangerous. We have daytime jobs that require us to be pretty busy. But Edward, what'd you think of the John Oliver segment? Because I felt like for the average guy, he hit the marks. He has to be funny, right? So he has to be funny. I felt like for the average guy, he hit the marks. What'd you think?
I think it was inaccurate if you really care what John Oliver thinks, but he like broadened exposure like Mike was talking about and made it funny and made it engaging and educated people in his own way about what HODL means and all these how really the community is kind of dysfunctional, and that's all. If you get into tech or if you get into any industry really, you figure out eventually the industry is dysfunctional. So I think he did did a fine job. Yeah.
We're all dysfunctional. Let's just be really clear about that. I kind of felt like he hit the high points right, and I felt like he had done some research, and his team had done some research to get the right keywords in there for and it was super funny about the guy Dave, I think, or whatever his name was at the office, who's always talking. And it's true, the guy who's always talking and just annoying you. And
I was talking to somebody the other day and they were like, somebody came in the other day and they were just talking about Bitcoin and blockchain stuff, and we just blew them off or whatever. But my only beef with him, which is not really a big deal, but is that I thought it was because Ellen had done her daytime morning thing 2 weeks before, and so I'm just like, you're only doing this because you're trying to play off of what Ellen's popularity and all the hype she got out of hers, and so it's not a big deal.
Well, no, I haven't. I'll have to go on YouTube and listen to that one. I didn't realize she had done one a couple weeks before.
Yeah, it's it was pretty similar. Anyways, it was it was toned down for the daytime housewife crowd.
Yeah, they're not going to drop the F-bomb on month, like John Oliver does. But
Right.
it was funny. We at dinner, Sarah and I sat down. I'm like, you got to see this. And so I played it for her, and she goes, how close is it? Like, she's like, I actually learned a few things in there. And I'm like, it's actually pretty close. It's a good average guy explanation of it.
Yeah.
I do think we'll talk about this in post show. I do think if we do see a turn, everybody's back in. Like, I feel like everybody's kind of waiting on the sidelines, like, oh, I don't know. But there's so much pent up FOMO at this moment. Like, if it moves significantly at all for a couple days in a row, I just feel like this thing could take back off again. It could be crazy.
So one way to judge that is I'm not a Tether guy by any means. People think it's a scam coin, etc. But if you look at USD Tether or look at Tether, and you can see the volume there, and that's pretty much where all that pent up energy is that a lot of people have gotten into Tether recently because they are waiting on the sidelines. And so I think it's cool that you can see that. I wouldn't endorse Tether, but not only because you're trusting. You're trusting folks for all these things, but there is a lot of conspiracy theories about what Tether is. But I think it's cool that you can see that because it's kind of hard to see that in a, I guess, like even in a TD Ameritrade, Smith Barney type world, right, or Merrill Lynch, right? You can't see. I take that back. I don't know for a fact, but you can't really tell if they're holding cash versus holding stocks versus it's very public in our world, and so. People that might have exited a stock or made large stock trades to get all the way out of the market, or they could be holding it still in their institutional fund or an institutional account, and you don't really know that. So yeah, look at Tether and you can see where all the money's been going recently. So
very, very, very cool. And we're going to talk about some conspiracy theories because I got a big one that we're going to talk about in the post show. Post show is going to be awesome, by the way. So let me encourage folks to join us in the post show for a few minutes. We'll do that afterwards. Mike, anything else you want to ask during this part of the show? I need to kind of wrap it so we can get into the post show.
Yeah, no, not during this part, but during the post show, we've kind of hit on some things.
Edward, did I miss anything that you want to throw in here? Just one more reminder. If we want to do the Omaha event?
Yeah, BitcoinDayOmaha.com. You can go there and buy tickets. So hopefully we'll see you there, and hopefully we really want to take the impetus. Part of the impetus was I get calls and people want to sit down for coffee and have me explain all these things. So the idea was, you get to kind of pick a whole lot of brains, not just mine, and you can take in as much as you want, ask all the questions you want, kind of just one spot to do all that. And it'd be cheaper than a coffee with me, actually, because I charge for that usually.
Oh, I like that. It's an expensive cup of coffee. If that's but very good. I'm glad you're charging for your hours because we know Uyghur charges for every. By the way, he sent me a bill. And he was like, by the way, I have to bill you for your podcast hours. Holy cow. Mike, I can't afford you, Mike. I'm sorry.
Yeah, your house is pretty sweet. Got a boat out front now.
I'm going to have to
see a gym.
I'm going to have to let you go, Uyghur.
All right.
I can't afford your legal services. Yeah, so, no, very good. Edward, hang on here. We'll go into the post show. Remind everyone that, again, if you're listening to the podcast feed of this, we have a post show available on Patreon. Go to theaverageguy.tv/support. I think that gets you there. Get to my Patreon page. I know it does. And you can listen to it. No Patreon charge this time. If you want to support the show, what Mike and I do here, $1 a month is all it takes. And every month I make the post show available. Lots of crypto conversation in the post show. So if you like that kind of stuff, head out and support us. If you don't like it, you can still support us. You don't have to get that stuff. I've got $1 and $5 plans that are out there if you want to be able to do it on Patreon. I always appreciate your support. It kind of helps do what we do here, pay the bills sometimes. And I drop that into a savings account. And then when I have an emergency for the podcast or an opportunity, I've never bought Bitcoin with it. Let me just go on record. Never have bought Bitcoin with your Patreon money, but it does help on the network here. And so we appreciate your support. Don't forget, you can contact me, and some of you do. Jim at theaverageguy.tv. You've tracked me down on Twitter at Jay Collison. By the way, Tony Rayner. Tony, I know you're out there listening right now. #1 Twitter guy of all time. His tweets are awesome.
I agree.
And, Tony's tweets are incredible. Tony, I don't know how you do it, but I have the most fun on Twitter with Tony. If you haven't joined us out in the Twitter community, jump out there. It's a ton of fun. Like, all the Twitter stuff is kind of gone away. It's just a ton of fun community to be a part of now, and we're having a good time out there. So Tony, thanks for priming the pump. out there. And there's others of you who tweet back the weather to me and some of those kinds of things. Edward, I do a weather tweet every day, and they tweet their own weather back to me, which is awesome. And so I appreciate you guys being on Twitter. Don't forget the AverageGuy.tv platform, both web and media hosting, powered by Maple Grove Partners. By the way, we'll do another Cyber Frontiers coming up here April 9th, I think, it's something like that. So we'll have another one out with Christian. We get secure, reliable, high-speed hosting from people that you know and trust. For more information, visit maplegrovepartners.com. Hosting plans, $10 a month, and they're super local, and nobody's better than Christian at this stuff. So Christian, not bullish on crypto. I'm just going to say it. He's not a bullish guy on crypto. So if that's your place, come over and listen to Cyber Frontiers. You'll hear some of that as well. He's just not that excited about it. Don't forget, you can download the Home Gadget Geeks app, available both Android and iPhone. It's available from LastPass. We thank them for their sponsorship of the show, and we appreciate it. Head out to homegadgetgeeks.com to get that one. T-shirts are still available if you want to head out to theaverageguy.tv/t-shirts. And final thing, thanks for coming out tonight, and we appreciate you guys listening. If you're listening to the recorded version, head over, just stop. No, give it a second. Then head over to theaverageguy.tv/support. Catch the post show. It's going to be good. I think it's going to be Art Bellish quality on conspiracies. So I'm just saying, yeah, I've got a good conspiracy. We're going to run by Edward, and this is going to be super good. So we're live every Thursday, 8 p.m. Central, 9 Eastern, out here at theaverageguy.tv/live. Join us live. With that, we'll say goodnight.